One, two, 400. Hey everybody, how you doing? Just wanted to say we hit the 400 subscriber mark on this channel, and thanks everybody so much. That's really cool. You know me, I never one time ask anybody to subscribe or like or smash this or do whatever. Doesn't interest me. But just for fun and for giggles, every time we go up 100, we have a little Q&A session. Hopefully what it really does is get everybody down below talking to each other and conversing back and forth about movies and stuff like that. So that's just what we do. So let's get down to brass taxes and start answering some questions. Okay, I got all the questions right here. Let's get down to business. Jiggery Pokery says, huge congratulations on reaching 400 subscribers. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Having listened to your fantastic reviews for the movies that feature Jan Michael Vincent, Damnation Alley, Defiance, and Hooper, I would love to know which one of those was your favorite and why. Ooh, man, that's really tough. Because it's kind of odd, like you have movies that are really Jan Michael Vincent movies, and you have movies that are kind of like with Jan Michael Vincent in it. Out of those three, Damnation Alley, Hooper, and of course Defiance, as far as Jan Michael Vincent movies go, it'll probably be Defiance. I really like that flick, always did, have always loved it. I probably find myself watching Hooper more often, just because it's a bigger extravaganza type of movie. It was funny, it was lighthearted, there was car chases and crashes and the whole ridiculousness of it. So I would say that's the one I watched the most, but if you're talking pure Jan Michael Vincent movies, if you're talking stuff like this, or you're talking like White Line Fever and Damnation Alley, well, Damnation was kind of a co-star thing with him for part, but I would really say Defiance, as far as it goes, his own thing. Also, yes, would you be able to review the cult classic Big Wednesday at some point, please? Of course I will. Certainly. I haven't seen it in a while, and it's one of those things I try to review everything I can at one point or another, or anything anybody asks me, but if I don't get a chance to see it, I just don't like to go off of ancient memories for something I haven't witnessed in a long time. So when I get a chance to sit down and watch it again, I'll definitely throw it in. The last couple of months have been really heavy with horror, which is what I do a lot in September and October. I'm getting back around to doing comedies and some other things and mixing in some other type of movies. So I'll try to get there as soon as I can. Okay, LPB 90. Did you add the 90 to there? I always thought it was just LPB. Well, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. Long-time viewer, big supporter. Man, thanks so much. It's awesome to have all this stuff there. So thank you so much. Your comments are always there. Much appreciated. Question number 1. Are you a fan of Alfred Hitchcock? Most definitely. And what are your top 3? Oh man, that's really tough. My third place could be any one of like Rear Window, or Vertigo, or North by Northwest. I love those 3 flicks. I think they're all great. So they would all be possibly number 3. Just I can't pick a top 3 with getting the third one all by itself. So any one of those will do. And the second spot would have to be Psycho. I love Psycho. It's a great movie. Come on, let's face it, it started the whole Flasher thing. It was what it was. It's legendary. It's the granddaddy of them all. But I think his best work, his number 1 work, and for me, my favorite motion picture of his, by far, bar none, is The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock, Tippi Hedren, the whole thing, I love The Birds. I think it's one of the all-time great classic horror movies because it's so grounded in a weird subject. I mean, just all the birds for some reason just start going crazy and killing people, and everything is in such an idealistic, pretty little suburb, whatever, sea, coastal town. I don't know how you want to word it, but it's like one of those places where you're like, well, nothing could ever go wrong here, and then something majorly goes wrong here, and it's completely out of their control. It's completely beyond their realm or scope of comprehension, and it's just done so eerie and so well. The scenes where she's walking along and coming up on things like, you know, all the birds as they're on the playgrounds, and it's just shot beautifully. It's a bizarre subject matter, especially for its time, and it's just so well crafted. It could have been something that really could have been just a shitty B movie, but because you had Hitchcock, it was great. What are you going to do? Okay, now this one's going to be tough. How do you rank these legends and what makes them different from one another? Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, and Paul Newman. Oh man, this is really tough. Okay, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. And it might shock you about some of the things I'm going to say, but it's just the way it is. In at number 4, I would have to put, and I'll get to why I find them all different in a moment, but at number 4, I would have to go Charles Bronson. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, dude, are you shitting me? Are you killing me? Or what are you saying? Bronson had some great stuff, and he had some really great movies. But I think a lot of his best movies were movies where he was in it with some other people. You know, whether it was The Great Escape or The Magnificent Seven or Once Upon a Time in the West, stuff like that. So he had moments and stuff where he had like really good popularity. But to a degree, I think that by the time the 80s hit, things were really ending. So his field and chunk of fame was so large. And let's face reality, Charles Bronson's acting was kind of, I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but it was in one zone. He kind of played always a tough guy, semi-tough guy, and that kind of thing. So it wasn't very varied. Number 3, I would say, and I hate to say this because he's one of my favorites, legendary Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen, again, career cut short due to him dying from cancer when he was still relatively young. And because of his kind of rebellious, out of the ordinary attitude, you know, especially from what they expect of you in Hollywood, his career was like really big in parts and then kind of small in others. I mean, yes, he was Towering Inferno. Yes, The Great Escape. Yes, I started with The Blob, all that kind of shit, whatever. But his career, the longevity of it was cut short early. He's a legendary character. He's a legendary guy. But it is what it is. I just have to put him at number, especially in this group. Number 2, I would have to go with Paul Newman. I mean, he was in the game for decades. Whether it was fun time comedy like Slapshot or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or The Verdict, whatever it is, you're talking about a guy that had multi-decade success, really good actor, all that kind of stuff. So I would put him in at number 2 out of this list. In number 1, you have to go with Eastwood. I mean, Jesus God. Guy's 90-something years old. If he hasn't starred in great movies, he's directed great movies for 5 decades now, 6 decades. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, really. I mean, not only out of this group, he's probably one of the biggest names that Hollywood has ever produced at all. I mean, you could just take his directing career and he's up near the top, or take his acting career and he's up near the top. So he has to reign supreme out of these 4 guys, even though they're all legendary guys, great ability and all that kind of stuff. But he has to be at the top of the mountain. And also you ask, what do I think makes these guys different? I think they're all great actors in their own respect. I think they're all great actors in their own right. If we were just talking acting ability, I would probably say Paul Newman. I mean, he was great at comedy. He was great at drama. He was great at, being the leading romantic man and all those kind of things. But he could do certain things that the other guys couldn't. Let's face reality. You weren't going to see a movie where Charles Bronson was playing the wimpy guy or very much the comedic guy. And Steve McQueen actually even said, and when he was talking to Steven Spielberg, why he couldn't be in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I can't cry on film. I could never give you that kind of a scene. I just can't do it. Newman could. Newman was one of those guys. He was just more well-rounded and more able to do those things. And after that, you would almost probably have to go with Eastwood. At least he did comedy. At least he tried to be kind of emotional in certain things. Bronson was just Bronson. We love him for what he was, but he was kind of that guy. Great actor, but that guy. And Steve McQueen, I just don't think ever really wanted to let himself go into those areas, even though he did phenomenal work in a lot of different movies. So I would say Paul Newman, because he was the most well-rounded. Eastwood, because he's just the most legendary. Steve McQueen, because you have him as this almost like James Dean figure where his ballpark was only so long, began here, ended there, and he was like this real rebel out of all of them, you know what I mean? So he had his thing going. And of course, Bronson's, Eastwood's Eastwood. Just some random thoughts. Next one is, what's your favorite Friday the 13th? What's your favorite ones and what's your worst ones? Whew, okay. Friday the 13th, I enjoyed the first one. Guess it was just more the slasher thing, just ripping off Halloween and trying to keep that whole thing going because it was big at the time. But I liked the first one. I thought the second one wasn't even that bad. Not a great movie, but not that bad. The third one, which really was just kind of shit, really, but it was fun for being shit. It was enjoyable because it was so goddamn ridiculous and stupid. And at least you got Jason in the mask for the first time. So those three I can handle. The rest, and the worst one of the group had to be Jason X, where he's in space, or Jason 10 or X, whatever they called it, I don't care. And he's in space, and it got so far removed from anything that you could relate to. I just couldn't even understand it anymore. And the production value looked like it was like shot on something that would shoot Doctor Who episodes from the 70s. It was just horrific and it was bad. And they just never should have made it. So it is what it is. The first three I could roll with. Anything after that, no. And 10 was just an embarrassment, or X, whatever it was just an embarrassment. I just, no. Number 5, after the rubbish Halloween ends, what do you think of the downfall of the franchise? I think the downfall of the franchise is freaking tragic. I didn't think there should have been a franchise, is really what it was. I'm one of those guys, I think that Halloween should have just been left alone. Like Psycho was for years anyway, until they started making a couple sequels decades later. I think it should have been left to be what it was. It should have been like The Thing was for years until they added a sequel. It should have been like something like that, where you just had this amazing motion picture, you let it stand on its own mate, and you never made another thing. The last three are a perfect example of why they shouldn't have ever gone back to the well. The only one I really did like was Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And I think that Halloween 3 shouldn't even have been on there. It should have just been Season of the Witch, Carpenter Presents, or some shit like that. And just put it, because I enjoyed that. It was a fun movie. It was unrelated. They did a couple wink and nods to the Halloween thing by putting it on a commercial and shit. But Halloween 3, Season of the Witch was fun. I enjoyed it because it wasn't another Michael Myers movie. His story began in that fucking first movie, and it ended in that first movie, and it didn't need to go anymore. It was the mystery. It was the not knowing that made that character great. And anything that they expanded on, it diluted it. It didn't need to be there. It's like making Jaws 2, 3, 4, 7, 12. It didn't need to be made. Jaws should have been left alone. Halloween should have been left alone. What is your top fight scenes of Jackie Chan? Well, okay, this is going to be a thing. I know Jackie Chan's been in a million movies, whether it's Drunken Master, whatever. He's been in a million things. You know what I mean? He's been a shitload of films. For me, my favorite will always be, just because it was something my son fell into and we watched it together a million times, and that's Rumble in the Bronx. I'm not saying it's his best work. I'm not saying it was the best fight scenes, but for the ones I like to watch, because it brings back a lot of memories of me and my kid when he was little watching it together, is Rumble in the Bronx. I thought the fight scenes in it were good. I thought he was still young enough to look good in fight scenes, and I think he was mature enough to know how to do really cool fight scenes. And they weren't too funny. I've never been into like comedy fight scenes. It just never was my thing. So with this, I think that Rumble in the Bronx was a good mesh. It was ridiculous and over the top, but you know, he tried to make it a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more whatever. So it was enjoyable, young enough to still pull it off, old enough to know how to do it right. I liked Rumble in the Bronx the most. Okay, who is your favorite singer? Oh God, I'm so happy I got a music question. Oh, I love this. I got a music question. Thank you. Who is my favorite singer? Now, underneath this, you write down Tom Jones, Matt Monro, Frank Sinatra, Shirley Bassey, Elvis, and why? Okay, for me, of the singers of everybody you listed right there, I would say Elvis number one. He's Elvis. I mean, how can you go across Elvis? He had so many cool hits, whether they were rock, whether they were gospel, whether they were all that kind of shit, so I love it. Right behind, as far as vocal abilities, you had to love Tom Jones. You know, it's not unusual. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. He had like this machismo to him, you know what I mean? It, sometimes borderline ridiculous fucking arrogance. But Tom Jones, Shirley Bassey, you know, great voice. Come on. All you had to do was listen to 007 shit there, and you know she had a great voice. Not really familiar with Matt Monro all that much, so I can't really pass judgment there. But of people that you didn't give me, and I had to give myself, I'll name my top three. I have to, in no certain order, because it shifts by day to day. I would say Freddie Mercury. I'm a huge Queen fan. Although I think half their music was just goofy. The other half that was great was fucking great. And I think Freddie was an amazing vocalist and an amazing front man. I'm a huge Freddie Mercury fan. Always will be. It's just the way it goes. Also, I have to say, Steve Perry. Young Steve Perry, from like 78 to like 82, was probably one of the most frightening vocal singers I had ever witnessed in my life. Clear as a bell. Long before he got the rasp that he got on Frontiers and Raised on Radio. Those first few years in Journey, that man's voice was just insane. Oh, I mean, just insane. So I could sit there, they got a concert from Houston, I think it was 1981, and I just sit there and I say to myself, this guy was fucking ridiculous. I mean, he did the clarity, the control, just, it was off the hook. So he would be in there. And another guy probably not many people know is a guy named Doug Pinnick, and he's the lead singer of a band, King's X. And he had, especially when he was younger, and he's like 72 years old now, when he was younger, that man's voice on their first 4 or 5 records from like, 88 to like 95, something like that, his voice was insane. It was bluesy, it was gospel, it was rock. He could scream like nobody else. It was just nuts. I met him, really cool guy, So his voice, if you ever get a chance, go look at the first 4, 5, 6 King's X records. Go check him out. This guy was devastating. Incredible voice. Do I think MacReady's character was the thing at the end of the movie? No, I don't think so. I know there was a lot of stuff like, you can't see the air coming out of Keith David's mouth, and all of a sudden, he might be the thing. And that's kind of cool to have that kind of speculation. But I really don't think you can really make MacReady the thing, because there's certain characters, I think, that if you try to take away their humanity, it kind of pulls you out of the relatability to it to a degree. Like, making Rick Deckard in Blade Runner, and always trying to, as the series went, as the re-changing of the movies went on, pushing him more like, is he a replicant? I always thought that was a little bit unnecessary and a little bit haywire. I didn't think it was necessary, because one of the things that made that movie was him rediscovering his humanity. And I think one of the things that makes MacReady classic is he's the every guy. He's not this big idealistic kind of guy. He's not anything like that. He just wound up being the leader, and he just did what he had to do. And to have that guy wind up being the thing, either at the tail end or have partway through it, I just don't think it would do the story justice. And I didn't see anything that would lead me to believe that something happened to him. I mean, he blew the shit out of everything, set it on fire, and then just walked out. So I don't really hold into that, and I hope they never went there, because it would just have pulled it apart for me. Anyway, by the way, if you ever watched or ever want to have fun, there's a PlayStation 2, 3, whatever game called The Thing, and it was actually pretty good. So if you ever get a chance to play it, check it out. And have I ever seen The Killer and Hard Boiled, the John Woo flicks? And do I think the style of action, do you think it's close to the John Wick style? I think John Wick and all those, although it's different, borrowed a lot from John Woo. John Woo was amazing. John Woo was amazing. I mean, Hard Boiled alone, the whole tea house scene is just friggin' insane. He was like the master of gun ballet. You know what I mean? He would take all these like crazy shootout scenes, and he would somehow make them pretty. I mean, they were violent, but they were pretty because of all the swooping action and all this kind of stuff that would never happen in real life. But I mean, it just looked amazing on film. And he even did that American movie, Hard Target, with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was actually still pretty good. Again, all his stuff is over the top. It's sensationalized. It's meant to be pretty, not realistic. And somebody who paid homage to him several years ago was Antoine Fuqua when he did The Replacement Killers. He kind of borrowed all that, And John Wick, and I think a lot of movies actually, from The Matrix to a lot of shit, borrowed from John Woo. So I think the John Wick movies did the same thing, although that they tried to incorporate that look, but with a lot of fighting in it. It wasn't as beautiful as a John Woo movie, but it was a mix of hand-to-hand and gunplay, where the John Woo movies were mostly just about gunplay. And I'll say one other thing, since I'm on this. I would also like to say that I think one of the greatest untapped talents in the history of motion pictures is literally Chow Yun-fat. The guy had it. Incredible actor, good-looking dude. You know what I mean? I think Antoine Fuqua actually called him like the Cary Grant of the Orient. And he comes across that way. dignified, respectable, gentlemanly, can act in any kind of role. He should have been a bigger star. He should have. I know he had a great career, especially overseas, and a pretty good career here. But he should have been a bigger star. That guy was top tier, top level shit, and he should have been in more things where he was bigger, in my opinion. Just saying. Do I think the Denzel Washington movie Man on Fire is underrated? It was alright. I seen it one time a while ago, so I don't want to pass too much judgment on it because I haven't seen it in a long time. You know what I mean? But I remember watching it once. It was an okay flick. It never really gets talked about with all this other stuff, but it was alright. It wasn't like it was horrible. So, you know, I'd have to go back and really look at it again to really be able to give you my honest opinion on it. But I don't remember not liking it, let me put it that way. I really do think one of his other kind of unsung, not as built up movies I really liked, even though it was kind of more offbeat, was Book of Eli. Nobody ever really talks about that much, but I really liked Book of Eli. I thought it was just different. I love movies that put a little bit of the religious, supernatural thing in there, oddly, in a strange way, and that movie kind of did it. Fight scenes were cool. It's funny seeing him be an action star as he's gotten older, which, like him and Liam Neeson and all these guys, are, as they're getting ancient, they become action stars. Go friggin' figure. But I think it worked. I enjoyed it. So Man on Fire was pretty good from what I remember, and Book of Eli I think people should check out just in and of itself. And last question, what is your favorite Charles Bronson movies? Holy Jesus, this is really tough because there was so many. And much like my comment on Jan Michael Vincent earlier, it's tough because a lot of Charles Bronson movies, I think his best movies were ones where he wasn't the singular star. You know what I mean? It was like The Great Escape was a great movie. He wasn't really the star. He was one of the stars. The Magnificent Seven, for Christ's sakes. I mean, come on. He wasn't the star, but he was one of the stars. And then Once Upon a Time in the West. He was a star in that. Was he the only star? No, but it was a phenomenal motion picture. And of course you got all this stuff, you know what I mean? You got, like, St. Ives, The Mechanic, Mr. Majestic. You got Red Sun. You got Hard Times, which is fucking amazing. You know what I mean? It's an amazing motion picture. But again, is he just the true star of that? I mean, there's other names in there, you know what I mean? Come on. So for me, my favorites of a movie that he starred in, where he was the man. Yes, The Mechanic was great. Yes, St. Ives was cool. Yes, you got all those things. But you have to go with the original Death Wish. For me, come on, the original Paul Kersey flick. Yes, every other Death Wish movie just got progressively 10 times worse. I mean, 10 times worse. The second one was like, and by the time they hit 3, 4, 7, 12, 75, whatever, they were comic books. It was just tragic, and it was horrible seeing him in those motion pictures. Actually, I wish he just walked away. I would have rather seen him retire from acting, to be fucking honest with you. But he made them, and they were shit. So to me, Charles Bronson is like the late 50s or early 60s, all the way up until like 1980, and I try to discount everything he kind of did after that. So of his movies, The Majestics and all that, I would say Death Wish is my favorite. But if you're talking about a movie that he was in, come on, The Magnificent Seven, Once Upon a Time in the Old West, or the West, I shouldn't say Old West, or Great Escape, things like that. I mean, those movies are fucking amazing. Those are amazing movies. Better than a grindhouse flick like Death Wish? Probably. But when I think of him alone, I think of Death Wish. What can I say? Anyway, thanks for the questions, everybody. I'm half asleep here. I'm trying to get through these. I know I rambled way too much. I just want to thank everybody who gave the questions. You guys are great. I want to thank everybody also who watches, checks the channel out, enjoys the reviews, goes and gets talking about these things to their friends, because that's the point of this, really, to find these old movies, discover them, and share them with everybody that you know. And that really gets some kind of a kick out of this. So thanks for the comments and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really cool of you guys, and taking time out of your lives and your day to watch some of the content I create is really cool. Let me say one last thing before I go. I used to always try to do a video a week, and if you notice, like the last few months, I'm doing them or maybe last half a year, I do them like every 2 weeks. Trying to get one out every week was kind of brutal. If I can still do it sometimes, I will. But again, my main thing is I play in a band, and the band is really starting to kick back up more a lot. We're starting to do a lot more. We're starting to get our stuff rolling. Everything kind of ground to a halt for us in 2019 because we were busy for year after year after year, and then COVID hit and the bars shut down and the clubs went, kind of screwed us over. And now we're really, really getting back up, and we've been working on a new record, and I'm the guy who does the mixing and the mastering and all that kind of stuff, so I'm really busy doing studio work, and I'm trying to wedge as many videos and still watch the movies and still do everything that I do. So if it's every 10, 12 days that I put one out or something like that, or even every 14, that's just a schedule I'll try to keep, and I'll always make sure that I do at least that. But if I can do more, I will. It's just really busy and really crazy. So anyway, thanks everybody. Take care. As always, stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for a friend. But most of all, never, and I mean never, take any bullshit from anybody. See you soon. And have a great Thanksgiving, because it's coming up like tomorrow or whatever. So have one. Take care.